So this year, we've been looking at God's call on our lives. A common mistake Christians make is to think that God only calls people to religious work. While we Christians should always do our work in ways that are in keeping with the life and teachings of Jesus, the actual work God calls us to do, whether it's a career or just a job in the moment, those calls are as varied as we are. So this morning, you're going to hear from 4 of our members, Laura Myers, Kathy Carr, Pam Reeve, and Steve Black-Schaffer,
intervention programs for children from birth to 3 years of age, providing support and resources for their parents, and modeling best practices for fostering communication development. For the last 25 years, I've worked in the public schools with preschool-aged children. I have loved working, but I'm not going to talk about my vocational calling this morning. I'm going to talk about a very recent experience of a God wink. Do people know what God winks are? I think some. A God wink refers to a seemingly coincidental event or moment that feels like a sign from God. While maybe not a calling, this moment was an answer to a question that I've been pondering for months now. What am I going to do when I retire? I thought about some of the things that I have loved and will miss the most about working with young children. And suddenly, it hit me. I love to play. How will I meet that need in retirement in some of the same ways that I have done in my career? Just a few minutes later, I had a very strong childhood memory of playing outside of our house in California. I had taken out some cardboard boxes and set them up around the front yard, and I was pretending to be a horse. I was the horse, galloping and jumping over the boxes, free as a bird. That memory brought me such joy that I was determined to look into ways near me to learn how to ride horses, something that I've always wanted to do in my life. Then one morning, shortly after this God wink moment, I encountered another coincidence. I went to my bookshelf wanting to find a book about contemplative living called Everyday Contemplative by L. Roger Owens. I remembered it as a book that I had found meaningful and thought it might help me move forward with retirement. Much to my surprise, there was a chapter called Dropping Our Seriousness, Playfulness. As the author writes, playfulness makes up part of a contemplative posture towards life, open to divine possibilities, able to see new avenues in what look like dead ends, able to find seeds of hope in a barren desert. He offers two insights about playfulness and prayer. That playfulness overcomes a fixed perspective, allowing for multiple grace-filled possibilities. And that playfulness helps us to approach life with God as an end in itself. It can shape our approach to prayer, those times we have reserved for giving our full attention to being open, available, and responsive to God. Well, you're not going to believe this, but I received a third God wink moment, bringing both of the previous experiences together. I started searching for horseback riding programs in my area, even though thinking about horseback riding at my age was a little scary. But God had other plans, and I came across an amazing place called Equi Evolution, which offers equine wellness classes and opportunities to connect with their horses through mindfulness, meditation, and yoga. I went to my first mindfulness class at the beginning of the month and discovered the peace and tranquility that being with these very intuitive creatures provided. As we entered the paddock, the instructor taught us ways to engage with the horses by reading their cues, watching their body language, and mirroring their movements. It was an amazing practice, and there were definitely moments of contemplative playfulness. I wanted to end with a list I found of the benefits of play for adults, which include stress reduction. Engaging in playful activities help adults cope with stress and enhances mood by triggering the release of endorphins. Improved creativity. Play boosts creativity and problem-solving skills, making work more productive and enjoyable. Enhanced social connections. Play fosters connections with others, improving relationships and social interactions. Increased life satisfaction. Incorporating play into daily life adds joy and can lead to greater overall life satisfaction. Better brain function. Activities that challenge the brain, such as games and puzzles, can improve cognitive function and prevent memory problems. I want to continue to develop a more playful, open, curious, and contemplative approach to life and prayer in this second chapter of my life. Thank you. Thank you. Before I sit down, this morning I was panicking about giving this talk because I felt, given what happened yesterday in the world and the circumstances, why am I going to talk about playfulness? And then I remembered, I've worked in 2 preschools. Both preschools, their mascot were bumblebees. And this most recent preschool, the Jones Early Childhood Center in Stoughton, Mass., we came up with guiding principles for our preschoolers. And I just want to share them with everybody because I think they're kind of really cool for everybody. But they're really important things to learn when you're in preschool. The first one is, be safe. take care of yourself, hands and feet to yourself, and use your listening ears. Ooh, sorry. I have visual aids thanks to Stacy this morning. The second one is be kind. Take care of your school. Be helpful and keep your school clean. And the third one is be a friend. Take care of others. Take turns and share. Everyone belongs. Thank you.
Good morning. 6 years ago, I picked up a copy of the Lenten Daily Devotional booklet at the back of Second Congregational Church. At the time, I was extremely happy in my job, helping investors plan and save for retirement. Ed and I were engaged and planning to marry in May of 2020. And I was the sole proud owner of a lake house on Little Squam Lake, enjoyed by many, especially me. Life was indeed good. I barely glanced at the cover of the devotional, which pictured a well-worn leather suitcase with the words, "Take nothing with you." It had no meaning to me for several days. Then I looked at the cover again. This time, the words seemed to jump out and into me. Take nothing with you. A strange feeling came over me, and I felt or heard the message, sell the lake house. Certain that I must have misheard, I waited. The next day, it was the same. Sell the lake house. Yes, Kathy, I am speaking to you. What? Sell my beloved lake house? It's impossible. Family and friends had enjoyed it for almost 20 years. We even held the Second Congregational Summer Worship and Picnic there for several years. The property taxes jumped by 50% in 2019, meaning the cost of upkeep would bump up against my current income. As a financial planner, I couldn't ignore the fact that it was now a financially losing proposition. I hate debt with a passion. Every day the feeling grew. By the following Sunday at Second Congregational, I shared my decision, asking for prayers to help me accept this as a reality. Thus began the process of sharing the news with family and friends, preparing to enjoy one last summer while getting the house ready for sale by fall. In July, while I was up at the lake house, I got a call from Ed's brother, Bob. They were in the Mass General emergency room. Ed's eyes were not aligned properly. He couldn't stand on his own, and they were waiting to be seen. Actually, he was having a mild stroke. I stopped everything and drove 2.5 hours to Mass General, where Ed was just being seen. It was an extremely busy night at the hospital. We spent the first night in the corridor of the emergency room. Tests revealed additional factors, including a form of arthritis. Randy Blackshaffer of Second Congregational agreed to examine Ed, as she specialized in stroke patient recovery at Spalding. She confirmed it was a mild stroke. With physical therapy and eye surgery to come, he had the tools of recovery at hand. I remain grateful for her help and reassurance. I realized that it was time to leave my job at Fidelity in Merrimack, New Hampshire, and retire several years earlier than I had anticipated. Ed's health and our life together far outweighed any other considerations. The lake house sold on December 6th, 2019. I retired on December 31st, 2019. Ed and I got married the following week at Everett City Hall. Though he was still very weak, the deed was done. We went to an attorney and put into place all the adult things needed to begin our married life: wills, healthcare proxies, durable powers of attorney, so that each of us would be protected. Then we opened a joint account and paid off our mortgage. We finished all of that late February 2020. 3 weeks later, COVID hit, effectively stopping most normal life, including real estate transactions. We spent the next 2 years mostly at home together. Ed fully recovered under Spalding and MGH's care, and finally got his other symptoms under control. With the help of my 2CC family and many friends, we had a fabulous wedding celebration in June of 2022, just before closing the church and preparing it to be sold. All because of those 4 words: take nothing with you. I relate to the expression, God is still speaking. I can't wait to hear what he says next.
Good morning. Perhaps like the first 2 speakers, after agreeing to do this a day or so later, I thought, oh my goodness, what have I gotten myself into? And I racked my brain, and I was very nervous about a story about calling that would be worthy of this group. And then, like he always does, I had a circumstance that I want to tell you about. A few months ago, I got an email from someone that I had not heard from in 14 or 15 years. We had worked together pretty closely a long time ago, and were very friendly, got along very well, but for 14 or 15 years, I had not heard from her. And the email said, I'd really like to connect, it's been a long time. I thought, oh, that's cool, that'd be nice. And then within a day or so, it was buried in the tsunami of emails that one gets as time goes by. A little while after that, I got a message through LinkedIn. Oh, it's been such a long time. Why don't we connect? Let's find a time to have coffee. And it went into my pile of LinkedIn requests. By the way, I'm not proud of any of this, because I do like to respond when people reach out. But it's been a very crazy, busy year. That's my excuse. So a little bit more time went by, and I kept thinking, oh, I should reach out, but I'm so busy. Looking back on it now, I see that God was very frustrated with me and brought in reinforcements, because I got a contact from someone that I work with now who said she had just had lunch with this person, with Connie, and Connie really needed to talk to me, and I really should make time for her. So I reached out to Connie and I said, I'm sure we can find an hour. Let's find an hour. And we arranged to get together at the Swanton Diner. And my full intention was to spend no more than an hour, because I had meetings before I saw her and meetings after I saw her. She had been through quite a bit the last 15 years and is currently going through an absolutely horrible divorce, has some issues with her daughter. We ended up spending not an hour and a half, but closer to 2 hours together. And when I came out of that, I was so filled with the opportunity that I had just had. I am telling you that I could feel the healing taking place while we were together. And not because of me. I mean, maybe 20% of the help for her was an idea I had or a connection I could make for her. 80% of it was being there, loving her, listening to her, affirming her, whatever it is that God wanted me to do in that 2-hour segment. I was so grateful that I had that opportunity, and I thanked God for being persistent with me. The reason I tell you that story is because I often rail at God for being so unclear. I want to know what you want me to do. I want a billboard. I want a neon sign. I want some large statement from you to tell me what to do. And I have some things that are threads through my life. I'm always about women's issues and equity issues, and that's kind of a thread that goes through my life. But in terms of actually doing something, I want that big tap on the shoulders. But I don't get that from God. Much more often, it's a suggestion that turns into something irresistible. It's a nudge. Every now and then, it's a kick in the rear end. But I have to be present and open and still enough to notice it. And that's what happened this time. I finally, with the extra help brought in by God, took a second to hear. And so I'm reminded of one of my favorite, and in our women's group, we make fun of ourselves because we don't quote scripture very well to each other. But one that I always like is to be still and know that God is God. When I pause to do that, then I can hear what God is trying to tell me and take action as God may want me to take action. So it's a reminder to me to slow down and to listen and to do the thing that God is asking me to do. Amen.
Well then. Yes. So, listening to the three previous speakers, I was struck by several things. One was that I must have been the first person to say, yes, I'll do it, but not first, because I ended up being last. Another one was, at first, oh, I'm so glad I didn't write anything down. And then I thought, maybe I should have written something down. We'll see how it goes. The reason I was glad I hadn't written anything down is that I was unfamiliar with the concept of a God wink, and maybe I had one, because I sort of knew what I wanted to say, but I didn't really know how to end it until something happened to me this past Monday evening, which was long after I'd agreed to do this. So, everything about this strikes me as a good idea, except for the fact that we are making a very strong implicit reference to the prophet Samuel, who was dedicated literally from before he was born, did have to be called 3 times before anybody figured out what was going on, but from then on seemed to have had pretty much the right idea. And I would liken my calling, insofar as I have one, very much more to that of the prophet Jonah. We heard about him recently. He tried to go in the opposite direction, but ended up doing what God wanted to be done, but clearly having very mixed feelings about how it had all gone and whether it left him where he wanted to be. So, I retired also very recently, at the end of February, after 47 years of doing the same thing. And I will talk a little bit about my vocation and what it has to do with being a calling. What I was doing was being a pathologist. Now, for those of you who aren't physicians, the logical thing is pathologist. Oh, okay, that's a kind of doctor. Slightly weird, but okay, it's a kind of doctor. If you're a physician, however, you realize that there are huge differences among the various medical practice types. I have led many mixed groups of practitioners, and I will tell you, it would be very unlikely you would ever confuse a child psychiatrist from a trauma surgeon. Different sorts of people thrive in those environments. So what sort of person is a pathologist? A pathologist is useful. That's why we're still around. We're diagnostic physicians. Now let's flip it around for just a second and think about things from the point of view of a patient. If there's something wrong with you, or you think there might be, you very much want to have a diagnosis. And that is what pathologists do. That's our focus. It can be done through biopsies and surgical specimens and clinical laboratory specimens, all sorts of things. But the reason, as a patient, you want a diagnosis is to be taken proper care of, to get the right advice about what that diagnosis means and what should be done about it. That is not typically what pathologists do. So that means that pathologists are sort of physician intermediaries. They're there once somebody realizes a diagnosis is called for to provide that diagnosis to the person who's going to take care of you. They don't get, typically, the immediate, one hopes, positive reinforcement of appreciation and gratitude and building the doctor-patient relationship. So what does that have to do with my fleeing my calling? Well, when I was in high school, I really, really liked mathematics, but I realized even then that I was not a totally abstract person, and so I decided physics. Physics is sort of like applied mathematics in the real world. When I got to college, I discovered that my fellow physics majors were even more geeky than I was, which I hadn't had the opportunity to encounter anybody like that in my small high school. But in college, yes. And so I began to realize I really liked physics. It was good, but I wasn't sure that if it was the right thing for my friends, it probably wasn't for me. I started taking all sorts of other sciences, and I still couldn't decide what to do. And in the end, having parents, both of whom are physicians, I relapsed. I reverted to the norm and said, okay, I can't decide. I'll go to medical school. I'll punt for 4 years. And that's what I did, because if you're a physician, you can be a scientist, you can be an academic, you can be a general practitioner, you can be a specialist, you can be an entrepreneur. There are all sorts of things you can do. I thought it was a pretty good idea and a good job of putting things off. And I did decide in medical school what I wanted to be. I wanted to be a pediatrician. And this changed slightly when I had the opportunity to sit down at afternoon tea with a attending physician, a pediatrician who was running my elective service, whom I greatly admired, and we were talking about things, and we came upon my choice of pediatrics. And he observed kindly that I was unusually affected by taking care of sick and, in particular, dying children. Everybody is, obviously, but really got to me. That didn't, in his opinion, at all rule out the possibility that I would be a fine pediatrician. However, he also observed that when asked why I wanted to be a pediatrician, my immediate and unhesitating response was, kids have the most interesting diseases. And he helped me to understand that maybe that was heading me in the direction of pathology. And so that's what happened. And not only were both my parents physicians, my father was a pathologist. So this was really embarrassing. Here I was going to medical school, which I wasn't going to do, going to be a pathologist, which I definitely wasn't going to do. And my father was also an academic pathologist and an educator. And of those 47 years, the last half, 23, I was a residency training program director. And during that time, I had to figure out, not for myself, but for others, what made somebody a good pathologist and what made them happy being a pathologist. And what really made people happy was being in that in-between state, knowing that they were serving people, that they were making up systems, running laboratories, diagnosing specimens in a way that was going to help people, even though they weren't there personally fulfilling their sort of emotional needs in that interaction. And I came to wonder about myself, and this brings me to where I was thinking about this before last Monday evening. And I was sort of thinking, okay, well, that's nice. I think I could characterize myself as selfless, but selfless could be looked at two ways. You can look, and I looked in the dictionary, you can look at it positively and say you put others on a par with or ahead of yourself, or it can mean you have no concerns or thoughts or motivations of your own. And I would not like to think that that latter is the case, but I wasn't really sure. Anyhow, Monday evening, I was invited back, even though I'm retired, for the graduation ceremony for this year's residents, because I'd been their training program director, depending on what track they'd followed, for 3 or 4, sometimes even 5 years, and they wanted me to sign their certificates as program director emeritus, an unofficial title, but it was nice. And at the graduation dinner, the high point was at the end, after all the certificates had been handed out, the residents had voted for the teaching faculty member of the year, which they do every year, and had done since before I came there. And the chief residents were up there ready to give out their award, and the new program director, my previous associate program director, whom I'm very proud of, stood up and said, there's going to be something different this year. This year, the Faculty Teaching Award will be called, and forever after, we'll see about forever, the Steve Blackshaffer Faculty Teaching Award. And I'd gotten that award, but years before I became a program director, and I sort of once again receded into the background, trying to set up systems such that the faculty in doing their job would be encouraged and enabled to teach. The residents doing their jobs would be encouraged and enabled to learn. And I felt really good about that, but it was such an invisible background thing. And I came away from that sort of thinking, wow, for a residency program director, this is about as close as you get to an apotheosis, because I have become an award. And so I decided at least some people saw me the way I would like to see myself, and I might not be imagining that my calling was really to help others to do their work and to learn. Thank you.